Von Willebrand's disease is a bleeding disorder that can be very difficult to get diagnosed. My name is Jonathan James, and I am so happy to come to you today to talk a little bit more about what bleeding disorders are like, and especially von Willebrand's disease. Von Willebrand's disease happens to be one of the most common bleeding disorders, with the CDC estimating that there's nearly 3 million people who likely have this particular genetic disorder. But only about 30,000 of them have been identified, and only about 19,000 of those are getting treatment regularly. And we believe that this is something that has a tremendous amount of education and learning and research that's needed to continue to help people to stop suffering unnecessarily. You may have had experiences like swelling, joint pain, muscle pain, maybe long nosebleeds, unexplainable long menstruation cycles. These types of things can be symptoms of a bleeding disorder that you may or may not know that you have. But asking the right questions and educating yourself on how to pursue a diagnosis may be the key to getting you the treatment that you need. I'm excited today to talk a little bit more about this topic, and I've invited someone who is a true living example of what it means to advocate for themselves in learning about this diagnosis. Jen Hastie, it is great to see you today. Thanks so much for joining me today for the Prevent podcast.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Well, I am really excited to talk about this topic because it's one that's near and dear to my heart. We've seen so many people who, unlike maybe some extreme cases, maybe in hemophilia, there are some people that very similar bleeding disorder, von Willebrand's disease, but they're getting diagnosed on average. I believe that the statistic shows like 36 years old or something like that is the average age that people are being diagnosed. Some people are getting diagnosed very young, but they're really only if they have a family history. But in your case, you were diagnosed very late in life and suffered for a long time with a lot of issues that could have been avoided had you been diagnosed earlier. Is that right?
Yes. I actually was told, my parents were told when I was about 4, I think it was my first surgery, a hernia surgery, that I was a bleeder, but they did nothing. My parents did nothing to follow up with that. They never did anything. It was when I had my daughter that I realized that maybe this was something, because my sister was watching my oldest daughter, who's now 28. At the time, she was 5. She had a nosebleed, and my sister couldn't get her nose to stop bleeding. And she called me at work, and I said, "It's just a nosebleed. Don't worry about it." And she happened to have a friend who was an ER doctor, and she said, "I can't get the nose to stop bleeding." And he said, "Well, how long has it been bleeding?" And she said, "It's been more than an hour now." And he said, "You have to bring her into the ER." And she's like, "It's just a nosebleed." That was our thing around the house. It's just a nosebleed. So they took her in, they gave her something to clot her. I went straight to the hospital. And they told us to follow up with a pediatrician, who then said, "This sounds like it could be von Willebrand's," and they sent us to a hematologist.
Wow. And is that ultimately what led even you getting diagnosed and others starting to investigate in your family about it?
Yes, absolutely. They were very good at the HTC. They said that they took a family history, and then they got her in for the testing, and they tried the Stymate with her, but it didn't work because we're a 2B, but they had her diagnosed as a 1. So that was another thing with the von Willebrand's. It's really hard to tell sometimes what's happening, because my at the time, the 5-year-old did not like to be stuck with a needle, and freaked out, entirely freaked out.
Wow.
So bad that they actually had to hold her down. So her levels shot up, and she looked like a 1, not a 2B. It wasn't until my youngest came along, who was diagnosed at 16 months because she was having nosebleeds, and bruising and the other things, mostly nosebleeds though, and her teeth bleeding when they were coming in. And she was immediately diagnosed as a 2B. So they went
Wow.
back and retyped my oldest.
Wow.
So it's been a long, long journey. And then I didn't get diagnosed formally till I was 56.
Wow. Wow. And how did that make you feel? Like when you started to realize this is connected to the issues and challenges you've had, and you think back about your childhood, did it help you feel like finally there's an explanation, or did it? I mean, I can't even imagine the whirlwind of emotions that you might feel when you get that news.
Yes, that definitely, like, it was, I just, as you were saying, and got goosebumps again, because for so long they assumed that the bleeding disorder, the HCC, had assumed that it came from me. But then
Mm.
I was told by 5 hematologists that I did not have von Willebrand's. And I had gotten a master's and I learned how to research. So I started, and when the internet came along, which was, there was a time that that wasn't an option.
Right.
I started to research things, and I read something about von Willebrand's, and that often that there had been someone who hadn't been diagnosed after 21 times of getting assays done. It took 21 times, or 22 times really, for this individual to be diagnosed with von Willebrand's.
Wow.
So I just asked my primary to do a genetic test, and my insurance, I was very, very fortunate because my insurance would do that. My copay was very minimal. And she ran it, came right back with 2B, like immediately. And I was like, that's what I've been trying to tell you.
Right. Right. One
So
of the things I think for people living with maybe other bleeding disorders, we've done a lot of research on hemophilia, and there's a lot of treatment options there. Whereas in contrast with von Willebrand disease, there's not very many treatment options. And in addition to that, it's very difficult to diagnose. But genetic testing, thankfully, is kind of the concrete way to be able to identify exactly what, a particular mutation that you have. And so we recommend, actually, some people may not know this out there who might be listening to this now, but actually, genetic testing is now on every formulary for every type of insurance. So if you are, suspicious that this could be the issue, this is something definitely to ask your physicians about, and you can ask your primary care to do the test, the genetic test. A lot of people don't know that either. They think they have to be at a specialist, but truly, the specialists are always the best place to get the most depth of information. But sometimes in the investigation period, and also your levels can change with hormone changes, different times of the month, emotional changes as well, right?
yes, then I pretty much checked off all the boxes. Stress can do it, emotions can do it, activity. I was very physically active. I played volleyball in college. I swam in college. I continued to do exercise, and then I taught dance for 30 years.
Oh my
So
gosh,
I was
wow.
working out every day, at least once a day, at least once, sometimes twice. Um, and so, yes, I checked off every single one of those boxes, and so I always look normal. Sometimes even now, and plus I also have a bone disease that causes inflammation throughout my body at all
Mm,
times. Something's
mm.
always trying to heal. So it was just very fortunate that I finally found a hematologist who looked at all the information, looked at me, took my history, and realized, looked at the articles that I brought, the peer reviewed articles from medical journals, so that she could see that I wasn't making up the fact that, these things could be affected. And she
Right.
actually believed me, and she started to give me factor here and there for my different procedures. And I would take a picture before the procedure of whatever body part it was, and then I would do the factor, and then I would take it again, and the even with the inflammation from the procedure, it was much better. So,
Wow.
yeah, and my kids always, I fought for them to get factor always. They always got treatment, and they
Mm,
still get treatment, but I just did not.
wow. Wow, it's such a mystery too when you go through surgery, the difference between healing and recovering with treatment versus without treatment is it could be drastically different, right?
Months and months.
Mm,
Usually it takes me about 8 months to heal from a surgery, and
mm.
lately it's been more like 3. or.
Mm. Wow.
But also some of the ones I've had more recently were more serious and bigger surgeries. So
Mhm.
they take a little longer anyway, but it has drastically reduced the amount of time that I've had to spend healing and recovering.
Well, and if I recall correctly, you also have had more than your fair share of surgeries through the years too. You've had over 30, is that right?
That is correct.
Wow.
Yes, and I
Wow.
didn't know that was the other thing. And when I was delivering my children, I did not know, but my sister happened to be in the room with my deliveries. Um, and she said, when I was finally diagnosed, I said, "See, I do have von Willebrand's," and she said, "Well, it makes sense because whenever they would, you would deliver, they would say, she's not stopping. She's not stopping. We need something on board here. She needs to get something for clotting." And no one told me that though. I thought that was very interesting that I was never told by the obstetrician at
Mm,
any point that they had given me clotting, because I, as someone who's just delivered a baby, I was busy doing other things. Um,
right,
I wasn't paying attention to what they were saying. And
right.
she said, "Oh no, they every time." And then also afterwards, I remember delivering, and I had just I had had a period in high school for longer than 4 months. It would
Mm,
look like it was going to stop, and then it would start all over, and so that was pretty awful. And I had gone to the nurse like 3 weeks in a row, and had bled through my clothing. And she's like,
mm,
there's something wrong here. You were just here." And
mhm,
she told that to my mother. But again, I sort of had parents that didn't really, they were, they were neglectful, really, is what
mm.
it amounts to. But
I'm so sorry.
they didn't do anything as far as that
Mhm,
goes. But that nurse finally said, "You need to take her to a doctor." And
mm,
I did get on the pill very early, in
mhm,
my senior year in high school to help that.
mhm,
But
mhm,
again, I was so used to having heavy menstrual cycles, and after delivering, they would say, "How's your bleeding?" And I would say it was fine. But I didn't know that it wasn't supposed to go for 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12
mhm,
weeks. I just kept putting up with it. So there, I had all the symptoms. I just didn't have the levels to prove it.
mm. It's so frustrating that it's difficult to get to a diagnosis, and at the same time, it's so any rare disease that you look at, you really have to have somebody that knows what they're looking for in order to do that. That's why I think the symptoms are so important to report correctly. But again, you only know what you know. If you don't have, that's why we see people that do have a family history get diagnosed so much earlier in life versus people that don't have any clue what it is. And I think that's one of the things that we're really passionate about is trying to get the word out as much as possible. So we always, love doing these types of interviews to share stories and be able to help people understand. And we ask people to share this stuff with their friends and family on their, news feeds and different things just to be able to help people understand because people really do suffer unnecessarily. And if you get the right information, they say always the old adage, knowledge is power, right? But if you don't know, there's people out there that are suffering greatly, and some people even pass away early. That it could have been preventable if they had had the right information. And so, it's in one sense, it's really no one to blame. In another sense, it feels like it's once you do get the right diagnosis, you're kind of caught in this like almost happy, sad, frustrated, quandary where you really want to, you wish you could have known sooner. But at the same time, and in a sense, it's really about the next generation. And your girls have gotten treatment far sooner than you did, right?
Absolutely. And I like to say that, people hem and haw about doing prophy or doing their factor, but I get to do factor. I
Mm-hmm.
get to do factor, and it makes me
Mm-hmm.
feel so much better, my
Mm-hmm.
entire body. And I am so grateful that I am now
Mm-hmm.
getting treatments. And I tell anybody, I don't care how many hematologists, if you think it's your body, and you think that it's not adding up right, that it matches, then just keep pushing, because I seriously had 5 people in my area tell me that I didn't have it. You can't
Mm,
possibly have it, actually.
mm,
But no one offered to do the genetic test. And I know that I think for ones, it's not as cut and dry,
mhm.
but it is for a genetic test. But I'm just so grateful that
Well, and
somebody listened to me.
a lot of people don't realize this. I think even among physicians, it's a little bit unclear unless they're specialists. That there's technically 3 types of von Willebrand's disease, but even within the type 2 specifically, type 1, type 2, type 3, and the type 2 specifically, I believe that there's at least 3, if I'm not mistaken, variations of type 2. There's
I think there are 5
multiple.
now,
Oh,
actually.
5, yeah. I knew
Yeah,
that there was multiple in that
yeah,
category. So, yeah, and that takes really genetic testing, and they're still learning. I mean, the reality is there's still so much more to discover in that, but I do believe that, you gotta keep, we have a obstetrician that, is retired now, that is one of our board members, and this is one of the things that he always says is, "If at first you don't get the results that you need or the answers you need from your physician, get a second opinion, get a third opinion, get a fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th opinion if you need to, but just keep, it's the little engine that could mindset. You've just got to keep going, keep going, keep going, keep asking the questions, even though it's frustrating, because I think across the other side of that is relief if you can get the right answers, right?
absolutely. Yep. And I don't think I grew up in a different, you know, generation where doctors, they know everything, and you
Hmm.
don't question the
Question,
doctors.
right?
Um, but I I am very, very happy that I didn't take what they said and just go with that.
Hmm.
That I just kept looking, just kept plugging along, like you said, the little engine that could. I just
Hmm.
kept looking because it made sense to me. Everything, the nosebleeds. I used to have 12-hour nosebleeds, 12-hour, and I'm not kidding.
Wow.
And then my mom would try to send me to school, but I would be so sick because all the blood would go in my stomach.
Right.
But I would end up coming home from school, and
Right.
once you're in a bleed, I don't know if this is a normal thing. Maybe this isn't, but with me, if I bleed once, I'm more apt to bleed again.
Yes, that does happen.
It
Yeah,
is the same.
absolutely. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so because that's what I noticed, and I just feel like if I had known, or if my parents had cared
Mhm.
at all, I would have these nosebleeds. I would wake them up and they'd say, "Go back to, we're going back to bed. You know what to do."
Bless your heart.
So I was never, I was determined not to do that with mine. Um,
Yes.
and I
Good for
think that's
you.
another thing, is listening to our kids. Whatever they say, they usually don't make up stuff like this. They don't usually make up pain.
Right.
That's more like a teenager thing, but the
Right.
young ones, they don't. They wanna go
Right.
play. So,
That's right. Don't
um
want anything to hold them back.
exactly.
Wow. Well, good for you for continuing to carry that on. I have, having my 2 girls that are affected, and then myself living with a bleeding disorder. I've found people would sometimes ask me like, which is harder, being a parent or being a patient, and I would oftentimes say that the parent thing is way harder because, you just can't. I'd rather take the pain on myself than I would to let them go through it, and simultaneously, in a sense, learning how to advocate for my kids has also helped me to become a better advocate for myself too. And that's been a challenge, but but good, in a sense. And so sounds like you've kind of experienced some of that also.
Yes, I've had, arguments with hematologists who wanted to do procedures on my kids without giving them factor prior, and I was like, "No, not happening."
Wow,
Nope.
good for you.
Yeah, nope. So,
That's one of the things I think that, is common among a lot of different rare diseases, is that there's something about the uh, patient has to become the expert, and you do have to become really well versed in what is the specifics about it, because you may find yourself in an emergency room someday, or needing a surgery or needing a procedure at some point that's kind of in an emergency situation, that if you're not well versed and not well prepared and don't know where to really hold the line, sometimes people can put you at more risk unknowingly. And they don't necessarily, it's not like they're doing it to harm you, but it can, and it can be detrimental if you're not careful, right?
Absolutely. Yes. I
Yeah.
wholeheartedly agree on that one because I had a knee replacement, uh, and they knew that I had to be, and they gave me, the hematologist at the time, prescribed baby aspirin and tranexamic, and that was it. And I never got any factor. And
Oh my gosh.
I met somebody recently on another one of these, through Hope, and then that I've been able to actually have a conversation with, who experienced similar things, and he didn't get factor either. And we
Mhm.
have very, very, very similar stories, except he was he received factor much sooner than I did. Mine was 5 years ago, and mine, I think, maybe ruined. The knee is
Oh.
not going to recover, I don't think. um, I had a revision after the knee replacement, and I had 2 MUAs, which is the manipulation under the anesthesia. And it wasn't until 58 when I had my shoulder done that I first got factor. So
Mm.
I recommend, even for ones. I mean, I'm not the doctor. I'm no one's doctor, but
Mhm.
I recommend you fight for it if you're a one,
Mhm.
even if you're just having a mouth procedure, or any procedure where they're gonna, cut on you,
Absolutely.
to request factor, at least
Mhm.
prior,
Mhm.
you know, because
That's
it
so
does help
true.
the healing process.
That's true, and the pain. You
Yes.
have a lot of,
Yes.
unnecessary pain because you're continually bleeding, and the pressure, and the and the weakness and everything else that goes along with it. Like you said, 8 months to 3 months is a big difference in someone's life, and it's critical, but it takes asking the right questions, which you mentioned, at coming to one of these online meetings. We are getting ready for a live educational day of sessions that anyone can come to, friends, neighbors, anybody can attend. And we encourage people to come to these things because it's so important to get connected to other people who are living with these things, because truly, Jen, you are the most expert person that's going to understand what you've experienced and the benefits, especially having lived so long without treatment. You understand the sort of the difference between what it's like without and what it is with, and I think that those things, you can be a huge resource to people. And so, you've been to a lot of those. You've been self-educating for a long time. Like you said, you have a master's degree, and you kind of a research nerd, and you went into it to try to learn as much as you could. But sometimes people, kind of like your parents, they avoid these things, and they just kind of push it under the rug and don't want to really deal with it or whatever, because it's complex, it's very difficult to understand. But if there's anybody that might be listening to this right now and thinking about, gosh, like, this sounds very familiar to my story, I just didn't have a diagnosis yet, or I did get a diagnosis and I wish I understood more. I mean, what would you say to somebody who's like thinking about like trying to learn as much as they can about coming to these online, events to learn as much as they can?
Well, I'll say thank you first for doing what you do,
Mm.
because I'm on it every single time you have one. I get on the webinar. I can't always be in the places, but I always get on webinars, and I always learn something. Always.
Mm.
And I'm not just saying that. I really do learn something new every time, because everyone's story, we may have commonalities, but everyone's is a little bit different, and we can learn from one another, and actually
So
we can
true.
support one another, which is the biggest thing that I've found.
That's
I
right.
have quite a community now of friends.
Mm.
The other thing I would also say is when if you're trying to get a diagnosis and you haven't received one yet, take pictures. Every time you hurt yourself,
Yes.
take a picture.
Yeah.
And if it's a bruise, draw a circle around it. and then watch it. If it goes outside of that circle, that's evidence right there. And you
That's
need to
right.
show that to your hematologist. Take it every single time. Also, you can make a log, write down what bled, what, for how long, this and that, those kinds of things. That is actual information for doctors, and they're scientific just in nature. So keeping that information and presenting that information can help greatly. But I really appreciate your organization, because I have met so many people through it, and having met that one guy, who I had never, every person I ever speak to, I say, have you ever had your knee replaced? Or if they say I had a knee replacement, I say, how did that go? This was the first person that I'd ever heard of that didn't get factor for it, and really, really had a hard time.
Yeah.
And he went as far as to say that he would, if he were to have another one, he would consider it now that he's getting the factor. And that is what I needed to hear, because my other one needs to be replaced now. So, so this community is invaluable.
I always say that the best thing about being diagnosed with a bleeding disorder is the community that comes along with it. And we try to do a good job at keeping people connected. And for many years, I can remember actually when we started in 2009, we used to think about, man, this technology is available to do, webinars and to do these, because you might live your whole life in your town and never meet another person that has a bleeding disorder. But, we're spread out. I always say it's the smallest town in the largest geography. We have, people spread out all over the country, but we get hundreds of people that come to these things and learn. And I think if COVID gave us anything, the global pandemic gave us the ability to leverage technology a little bit more to do this. But we've continued to invest in connecting in this way, because it really is so invaluable when you meet somebody else that's gone along your journey. And you can attest to this, Jen. I know I see you in the chat often at these things, but the chat, it just blows up. I mean, people are just telling their stories, sharing with each other, and then we stay in touch after the fact. And to me, that's really the value. That's the best part, is us being able to collaborate with each other so that we can really be able to support each other when we're going through things. And what worked for you? How is this working? Are you doing this or that? And there are a lot of things that try to, steal our attention away, and life is busy and all of those things. But we always encourage people to try to come when they can, because these live collaborative moments are the time to be able to learn as much as possible from other people. So thank you for being willing to share your story today, and also just being involved in this community that we call Hope. And I really just value just your experience and your wealth of knowledge and your fortitude to continue to push through to get the treatment that you need for yourself, but also what you've had to endure to fight for your kids too. And I know that they're grateful to you as well. And so you are a hero, and I'm glad to know you. And we probably would have never met any other way but by having been connected through blood. Lots of pun intended there. But I do really just appreciate you and appreciate your contribution to our community, because we need more people connecting like you, just to be able to help cultivate a sense of belonging, but also a sense of fierce advocacy, because truly there is no army coming to save us other than us. And we have to be able to stick together to be able to continue to learn, develop, and grow, so that we can be strong when we have to face some of the dismissal that exists out there in the insurance world, especially, and also in the treater world too sometimes. So thank you for being with me today on this podcast. I know it's going to help a lot of people. If you'd like to talk to Jen more, you can always make a comment down below. She'll be looking at those comments with us. And then also join us for our Advancing Willebrand Management on Wednesday, July 16th. We would love to see you there. But thanks so much for being with me today, Jen, and look forward to seeing you very, very soon.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Wow. Big kudos to Jen for her fierce determination to get what she's needed by diagnosis, treatment, advocating for her girls. And I just want to encourage you, if these are things that you've struggled with, questions that you feel like are unanswered in your life, I truly believe that there's an opportunity for you to get some answers. And we would love to be able to facilitate that. We're going to have some amazing physicians. We're going to have some true experts, opinion leaders that are going to be talking, and patients that will be sharing more of their stories with us on July 16th. It's going to be a live online seminar, and we'd love for you to join us. You can go to our website at Hope-Charities and register for this free event. It's super important that you do that so that we can send the links to you and that you can participate and keep you updated on all the information that's going on. We also love to have fun, and we believe in generosity. So we'll be doing a lot of raffles and giveaways and all kinds of fun things too. But if you have any questions about the event, you can always email us at events@Hope-Charities. And we would love to know if there's any questions that you might have that we can answer. And otherwise, we would love to see you and at this amazing online event. You can join us from anywhere, from your phone, your iPad, your mobile device, as well as your laptop, and listen in. We have lots of people that join in and listen in while they're working or while they're doing other things. But we would love to have you here. And once again, a big thank you to Jen for being with me today to be a part of this conversation and to share her story. We really look forward to being able to connect with you in the same way in the future. This pre-event podcast, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care and have a great day.